Hello friends, how are you? Hope you're all healthy and happy. Make sure to watch until the end to catch everything clearly. Have you heard of this P-38 fighter bomber? The Lockheed P-38 Lightning emerged as a formidable fighter during the Second World War, known for its striking presence on the battlefield. On August 14, 1942, a pilot manning the controls of a novel American fighter, the P-38 Lightning, swooped from the Atlantic skies. The P-38 lived up to its name, embodying the swift and potent characteristics of a natural phenomenon. The P-38's unique architecture, especially its dual tails, endowed the Lightning with a revolutionary appearance. Firing a barrage of 409 rounds a minute from its front-mounted armament, the pilot quickly brought down the Condor, recording the initial downing of a German plane by an American during the war. In the following 6 months, the P-38 demonstrated its adaptability in the deserts of North Africa. A German pilot, overcome with panic, capitulated to the forces in an Allied encampment near Tunisia, frantically pointing skyward and uttering the term "Der Gebleswanstiefel" repeatedly. After interpreting his words US, officials unraveled the essence of his dread. The P-38 had earned an ominous moniker, the fork-tailed devil. The P-38 stood out as an exceptional fighter bomber during the war, asserting aerial supremacy in both the Pacific and European theaters. The P-38 stood out as an exceptional fighter bomber during the war, asserting aerial supremacy in both the Pacific and European theaters. It served in a versatile array of roles from protective fighter, to bomber escort, to tactical bomber. Most prominently, it was the instrument that led to the downfall of Japan's most formidable military leader. Lockheed, fresh in the defense sector, presented the XP-38, an innovative design that broke away from traditional aircraft structures, showcasing a tripod configuration and twin tails. The side pods aligned with the tails housed an Allison V1710 engine each, boasting 1,000 horsepower. Despite its unconventional design, the Army embraced the XP-38, driven by the necessity for its robust power and velocity to rival the latest German and British aircraft. It was heavily armed, featuring an arsenal of 4.50 caliber machine guns and a solitary 20 mm cannon, all mounted within the aircraft's nose. Lockheed created a secret team for the project. They called it Skunk Works later. Hall Hibbard and Clarence Kelly Johnson led Lockheed's design team. They reviewed various twin-engined layouts. Push-pull propellers were one option. A prototype P-38 fighter undergoes wind tunnel testing at a Lockheed facility. Engineers at Lockheed developed a twin-engine configuration for the P-38 Lightning to meet specifications set by the US Army Air Corps in 1937. They chose a unique design, similar to some other aircraft such as the Fokker GI. The Northrop P-61 and Saab 21 also had this shape. The team opted for twin booms. This will house the tail, engine and turbo supercharger. The pilot and armament will sit in the center pod. The Northrop P-61 and Saab 21 also have this shape. The team opted to use twin booms. This will house the tail, engine and turbo supercharger. The pilot and armament will sit in the center pod. The XP-38 Gondola will have 2.50 caliber guns and 2.30 caliber guns. It will also be equipped with a prototype T1 automatic cannon. The IP-38 replaces the T1 with a 37 mm automatic cannon. This cannon has 3 5-round clips. However, this arrangement did not work well in flight. From March to June 1941, they tested more armament. The P-38E eventually had 4 machine guns and 1 20 mm cannon. This layout was rare. US aircraft usually had wing-mounted guns. The P-38's nose gun could hit targets up to 1,000 meters away. Other aircraft have wing-mounted guns. The P-38's cannon fired 650 rounds per minute. The machine guns fired 850. The combined fire rate was over 4,000 rounds per minute. The cannon could fire for 14 seconds. The machine guns could fire for 35 seconds with full magazines. Lockheed's design also had a new landing gear and a bubble canopy. It featured 2 1000 HP engines with unique propellers. These helped cancel out engine torque. The engines had opposite turning crankshafts. The P-38 used stainless steel and smooth aluminum panels. It was the first American fighter to fly over 400 mph in level flight. Test flights showed issues, first thought to be tail flutter. At speeds close to Mach 0.68, especially in dives, the tail shook and the nose dipped. In this dive, the P-38 would stall and the controls would jam. The pilot would have to escape or wait to regain control in denser air. In May 1941, Major Cy Nagilki managed to break out of this lockup and recover by using trim. Lockheed engineers knew that this was a big problem. However, they had to prioritize their current orders first. In June 1941, the service was renamed the U.S. Army Air Force USAF. In September, they delivered 65 Lightning to the USAF and allies. By November, Lockheed had time to address dive control issues. They tested new ideas. The first was to add spring tabs to the elevators. This tab would help the pilot in high-speed dives. Test pilot Ralph Verdon had to follow a specific test plan. He had to avoid rapid movements at low altitudes. A warning was affixed to his panel about this. On November 4, 1941, Verdon flew UIP P-38-1 and followed the test plan. However, he dived steeply and tried to pull away. The tail failed and Verdon died in the crash. The engineers rejected servo tabs as a solution. In 1941, flapping usually meant a weak tail, but the P-38's tail was rigid, fully coated in aluminum. The P-38 never really had a flap. To demonstrate, Lockheed added thicker metal to one of its tails. However, this did not change the vibration or diving problems. Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth B. Wolfe suggested trying external mass balance. The P-38 already had an internal balance, but they tested various external balances with risky flights. Kelly Johnson reported to Wolfe that this did not solve the vibration or dive problems. Nonetheless, Wolfe insisted on adding it to all P-38s. General Arnold, head of the Army Air Forces, ordered them to proceed. The tests, conducted up to Mach 0.74, identified the P-38's diving problem. The center of pressure moves backward in high-speed airflow. Test pilots confirmed its effectiveness. Installed outside the engine, the flaps dropped 35 deg in 1.5 seconds. Instead of slowing down the aircraft, the flaps maintained lift. By the end of 1943, Lockheed had a dive flap device ready for field modification. This would allow the P-38 in various terrains to better handle compressibility. However, logistics faltered. In March 1944, an RAF fighter dropped a C-54 carrying 200 supplies to England, mistaking it for an enemy aircraft. Back at Burbank, they fitted the P-38JS that had just come off the line with outdoor diving covers. In June 1944, the last 210 P-38JS received theirs on the production line. Although it proved useful, the 14-month delay meant only the last batch of Lightning got dive flaps on the assembly line. The P-38 had another problem, as its counter-rotating propellers rotated outwards at the top. If one of the engines failed during takeoff, the aircraft would yaw and roll in the direction of the failed engine. The standard takeoff procedure for twin-engine aircraft is to run the remaining engine at full speed. The P-38 caused the aircraft to roll over and crash suddenly and uncontrollably. Pilots learned to overcome this by lowering the good engine, resting the failed engine, and then slowly increasing power for stable flight. The P-38's engines ran quietly, thanks to the turbosuperchargers muffling the exhaust. Cockpit temperature control was problematic. Pilots overheated as the canopy couldn't fully open. In cold climates, they froze since the engines were too far for heat transfer. Later models had fixes like heated suits. Before UIP P-38s were tested, the USA ordered 66 P-38s on September 20, 1939. By mid-1941, the USAF received 30, some unarmed. These were later armed with machine guns and a cannon. They also got armored glass and cockpit protection. One experimental unit had a pressurized cabin and was designated the XP-38A. According to European reports, the final 36 were upgraded for combat and designated the P-38D. There were no P-38BS or CS. The P-38D helped work out the kinks and familiarize the USAF with the aircraft. In March 1940, the French and British ordered 667 P-38s for $100 million. They designated them the Model 322F for the French and the Model 322 billion for the British. This variant was similar to the P-38AT. They wanted the Allison to be like their P-40 Tomahawk and to forego the counter-rotating engines and turbo-superchargers. The target speed was 400 mph at 16,900 feet. The fall of France allowed the British to inherit the order and renamed it the Lightning. In June 1941, British experience from recent air combat led them to adjust the specifications. They changed the contract in August. Now, 143 units would remain as ordered, becoming the Lightning I. The remainder would be upgraded to the P-38E level, becoming the Lightning II. That summer, reports of tail flutter by RAF pilots led to the cancellation of most Lightning IIs. Lockheed insisted on honoring the original contract. Discussions turned sour. The attack on Pearl Harbor changed the situation. The US took 40 Model 322s for home defense. The remainder were given to the USAF starting in January 1942. The RAF tested 3 in May at various British facilities. These lacked armament and turbochargers and were limited to 300 mph. They were returned to the USAF later. Of the 140 Lightning I's, 19 remained unchanged as RP-322Es. The remainder became P-322Es, which were used for training without turbochargers. A few RP-322s served as testbeds for modifications. Below 16,000 feet, the RP-322 was fast and stable. The 524 Lightning E's gained more powerful F-10 engines and wing pylons for additional fuel or bombs. They served in the Pacific as F-5 reconnaissance aircraft or P-38G fighters. The latter played a key role in downing Admiral Yamamoto. Miss Virginia, AG model, participated in the mission. Previously, it had seen action against Japanese aircraft and ships. The British retained the name Lightning rather than Lockheed's Atalanta, following their mythological naming tradition. The USAF bomber mafia, opposed by some, established policy in the 1930s. They opposed research into long-range fighters, considering them impractical. They did not want this research to compete with bomber development. The aircraft manufacturers knew that adding range-extending subsystems to fighters would not give them an advantage.